Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kathleen and today's video I wanted to go ahead and share with you guys the books that I read during the month of July. So July was actually one of my better reading months. I read a total of 7 books and I am so proud of that number. I just consumed so many great books this month and I ended up even discovering a new favorite this month, which I cannot wait to talk to you guys about. Now, one of the books that I read during the month of July was for Booktubeathon because the Booktubeathon started on the last 2 days of July and I already did a Booktubeathon wrap up, so I'm not going to exactly talk about the book that I read during Booktubeathon, which was Want by Cindy Pon, because I'll go ahead and just leave my Booktubeathon wrap up linked on the screen if you guys would like to check out all the books that I read during that week. But I enjoyed the book Want. It was a 4-star and I honestly can't wait for the next book. So let's just go ahead and get started with the other 6 books that I read during the month of July. Alright, and so the first book that I read during the month of July was Lifelike by Jay Kristoff. Jay Kristoff is the co-author of the Illuminate Files, which happens to be one of my favorite series of all time, so I was really excited diving into this world. It is a sci-fi world and there are robots, and these lifelike robots have been created. They're supposed to mimic human life and they kind of become too human-like, and it's really interesting. I really enjoyed this book, but I have to say it did not blow me away like Illuminate did. And I know it's wrong to go into this book expecting it to be blown away by this book like you were with a previous work by the same author, but I was just expecting to, because I really loved Illuminate. And I know he did not technically write Illuminate by himself, he co-wrote it with Amy Kaufman, but that doesn't mean I did not love this book. Again, I gave it 4 stars. It was really good. The ending of this book just left me shattered. It just, wow, I was like, it's an extraordinary ending, and honestly it left me wanting for the next book. Obviously the next book will not be out till next year. This was actually the BIBLIO Squad's book pick of the month for the month of July, so we did have our live show where we discussed all of our thoughts and feelings on this book. If you guys would like to check out more of my in-depth thoughts and feelings on this book, my spoilery thoughts and feelings on this book, I'll leave it linked on the screen for you guys to check it out if you like. And then the next book that I read during the month of July was The Son of Neptune by Rick Riordan. This is book 2 in the Heroes of Olympus. And the first book, which was The Lost Hero, we didn't really get Percy Jackson as a main character. We follow a whole new cast of characters, and the characters from the original Percy Jackson series we kind of got glimpses of, but Percy Jackson was one of the main characters in this book and I was very excited to read about him again. So many new things are happening and another world has been opened up, and I'm so in love with this series already. I gave this book 4 stars. I love this book as much as I love the first one, and I cannot wait to see how the world continues to build and how the characters continue to grow, and I cannot wait to continue on with the series. I love Rick Riordan's style of writing because he just makes everything so much fun and you really immerse yourself in the story. And the next book that I read during the month of July was The Geography of You and Me by Jennifer E. Smith. This was my wrapped book for the month of July, and honestly I wasn't expecting much. I read some reviews and a lot of people just didn't think it was all that great. I actually really ended up enjoying this book. It is about these 2 teens who meet on a day where the city kind of has a citywide blackout and they kind of bond that way, but then the next day she kind of moves away and his dad loses his job kind of thing, so he has to move away, but they keep corresponding with each other using postcards. It's a really good book. I wouldn't say it's the best thing I've ever read. It's certainly not the best contemporary I ever read. It was exactly what I was expecting. It was a cute fluffy contemporary. I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. And the next book that I read during the month of July is the book that is now one of my new favorite books of all time, and it is The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. So this was the BIBLIO Squad's book pick of the month for the month of August, and we had our live show a few weeks ago and I loved it so much. This was such a great book and I cannot believe that it took me this long to read this book, because I believe this book came out in like 2012. It is a dystopian book with sci-fi elements. I don't think the story is completely original. There have been many stories where people gain supernatural abilities. However, just the way that Alexandra Bracken created this world and created these characters just really resonated within me. I really connected with the characters, and not just the main character herself, but all of the side characters. I loved every single character in this book, including Zoo and Chubbs. I think Chubbs is probably my favorite character. And one thing that I really liked about this book is the love interest, Liam. I feel like in a lot of books, sometimes the love interest tends to be very angsty, kind of like a bad boy type with issues and baggage. But Liam was just such a sweetheart, and he's so precious, and it was so refreshing to read about a love interest who's just a selfless and just genuinely nice guy. And I loved reading about him, and I loved watching his relationship with the main character grow, and it was just so sweet, and I loved this book so much. And the ending of this book nearly killed me. It was I was expecting something to happen, but I wasn't necessarily expecting that to happen. I was so emotional reading the ending of this book, and it was so great. And I went on and read Never Fade, which is the sequel to this book, during Booktubeathon, and that book also shattered me. So this book, this series, the Darkest Mind series, has become one of my favorite series of all time, and of course I gave this book 5 stars because it deserves no less. And then the next book that I read during the month of July was My Plain Jane by Cynthia Han, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows. This was the Once Upon a Read-Alongs book pick of the month for the month of July, and we had our live show at the end of July, on the last Sunday of July. And this is the companion to My Lady Jane, and that story was about Jane Grey, who was a real person in history. This book is about Jane Eyre, which was a fictional literary character written by Charlotte Bronte, and I enjoyed this book. I loved My Lady Jane, so I was expecting to love this book as well, and I really did. I loved this book so much. I gave it 4 stars. However, I have to say, I don't think I loved it as much as My Lady Jane. I think the first book, My Lady Jane, was just funnier and more comical, and a lot of more silly things happened. I do feel like this book was just a little bit darker, and although funny, not as funny, but I still enjoyed it. And I liked that Charlotte Bronte was actually a character in this book. If you guys have not read My Lady Jane or My Plain Jane, I would so highly recommend it because it's really good, especially the first book. It's really funny as well. Alright, and then the final book that I read during the month of July, I actually ended up finishing this book in August. However, I read the majority of it during July, so I'm just gonna go ahead and count it towards my July wrap-up. And it is Lady Midnight by Cassandra Clare. This is book 1 in the Dark Artifices series, and it follows about 5 years after the events of City of Heavenly Fire. And I have to say, I really loved it. I can't say I love it as much as some other books by Cassandra Clare. I gave this book 4.5 stars, but I just feel like it took me too long to read this book. I feel like her stories are very dense, and obviously this book is enormous. It's 660 pages, so it just took me so long to read this book, and sometimes I felt like I had to push myself to read it, but I loved it. I enjoyed getting back into the Shadowhunter world, learning new things about the world, and following new characters, and falling in love with new characters, and following new villains. I just really enjoyed it, and we did get to see some of the old characters from the original The Mortal Instruments series in this book, and I really loved it, and I cannot wait to get into Lord of Shadows. Alright guys, and that is all for my July wrap-up. I am still so immensely proud of the fact that I read 7 books. Anyways, let me know how your reading month during the month of July was, because I would really love to know. Anyway guys, thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a like if you did, and subscribe to my channel if you're not already. All of my social medias are linked down below, including Twitter, Instagram, and Goodreads if you'd like to follow me. I hope to see you guys on my next video. Have a good day guys, and keep reading. Bye!